They would cut through my liver at exactly 7:30 a.m., removing 60% of the organ that keeps me alive. The night before, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was scared of the surgery. I was scared my daughter Sarah was right. For 3 months, I had ignored the cold feeling in my stomach every time David talked about how grateful he was for my sacrifice. For 3 months, I told myself Sarah was just being difficult about her stepfather. But lying in that hospital bed at 3 a.m., staring at the consent forms that would let them slice into my body in 4.5 hours, I finally admitted what I had been too afraid to face. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. My name is Margaret Sullivan, and I'm 62 years old. 12 years ago, I married David after my first husband died. It was a second chance at happiness, and David seemed like a gift. Charming, attentive, everything my kids said they wanted for me after years of loneliness. But 6 months ago, everything changed when David collapsed at home. "Margaret," he gasped, clutching his stomach. "Something's wrong. Really wrong." The emergency room doctor was grim. "Mr. Sullivan, your liver enzymes are extremely elevated. We need to run more tests, but this looks serious." Over the next weeks, the diagnosis became clear: end-stage liver disease. Without a transplant, David had maybe 6 months to live. "There's a waiting list," Dr. Peterson explained. "But given your husband's age and condition, the wait could be too long." That's when David took my hand with tears in his eyes. "Margaret, I can't ask this of you." "Ask what?" "The doctor says family members can donate part of their liver. It regenerates. You could save my life." I didn't hesitate. After 35 years working as a hospital administrator, I understood medical procedures better than most. I'd coordinated thousands of insurance authorizations, managed medical billing for complex surgeries. This was serious, but doable. I did what I always did with major medical cases. I reviewed David's initial test results and insurance documentation. Everything appeared legitimate: elevated liver enzymes, specialist referrals, proper diagnostic codes. What I didn't know was that Dr. Harrison had falsified the early records specifically to pass my professional scrutiny. Knowing my background would make me verify the basics. After those first checks came back clean, I stopped investigating out of respect for my husband's medical privacy. "Of course," I said immediately. "Of course I'll do it." David cried with relief. But when I told my children, their reactions were different. My son Michael was supportive, but worried. "Mom, this is major surgery. Are you sure you're healthy enough?" But Sarah, my 35-year-old daughter, was furious. "This is insane, Mom. You're 62. You could die." "Sarah, your stepfather is dying. I have the power to save him." "Stepfather," she said coldly. "Exactly. He's not even your real family." "Sarah!" "Mom, something about this whole situation feels wrong. David's been acting strange lately. Secretive phone calls, going out at weird hours, and now suddenly he needs your liver?" Have you ever made a sacrifice this big for someone you loved? The kind where you'd literally give part of your body to save them? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear about the lengths people go to for love. I was furious at Sarah's suspicions. How dare she question David's illness when he was dying? But deep down, some part of me wondered why she was so resistant to helping her stepfather. The pre-surgical preparations were extensive: blood tests, psychological evaluations, meeting with the surgical team. As a former hospital administrator, I knew the drill, but experiencing it as a patient was different. Mrs. Sullivan, Dr. Harrison, the transplant surgeon, explained during our consultation, "This is a significant procedure. We'll be removing approximately 60% of your liver. There are risks." "I understand the risks," I replied. "I spent decades in hospital administration. I know exactly what we're dealing with." David squeezed my hand. "Dr. Harrison, I can never repay Margaret for this gift." But Sarah's words echoed in my head. Something feels wrong. The night before surgery, David was unusually affectionate. "Margaret, you're saving my life. I'll never forget this sacrifice." Something in his tone made my skin crawl, but I pushed the feeling away. That's when Sarah arrived for what she called our final conversation. "Mom, please, don't do this surgery." Sarah stood in my hospital room at 9 p.m., her face desperate. Michael sat quietly in the corner, torn between his sister and stepfather. "Sarah, we've been over this 100 times. David is dying. This surgery will save his life." "But what if he's not really dying?" I stared at my daughter. "What are you talking about?" "Mom, I've been watching him for months. Something doesn't add up. The medical bills, his behavior, the way he talks about the surgery." "Sarah, I've reviewed every single medical bill through my insurance background. Everything is legitimate." "Are you sure? Really sure?" I was. As a former hospital administrator, I'd spent 35 years coordinating medical insurance, detecting billing fraud, managing complex medical cases. If there were irregularities in David's treatment, I would have spotted them immediately. But Sarah persisted. "Mom, remember when you used to investigate insurance fraud? You always said the key was looking for patterns that didn't make sense." "This isn't insurance fraud, Sarah. This is your stepfather's life." "Is it, though? Mom, when was the last time you saw David actually sick? I mean really sick, not just complaining about fatigue." I thought about it. David's symptoms were mostly fatigue and occasional nausea, but liver disease often presents that way in early stages. "Sarah, you're seeing patterns that aren't there because you've never accepted David as family." The words hurt her, I could see it, but they were true. From the day I married David, Sarah maintained a polite but cold distance. She'd been 23 then, still grieving her father's death. "Mom, it's not about accepting him. It's about protecting you." "From what?" "I don't know yet. But something is wrong with this whole situation." Michael finally spoke up. "Sarah, what exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that maybe David isn't as sick as he claims. Maybe there's something else going on. Sometimes family members see things we don't want to see. Have you ever experienced this? When someone you love is warning you about something, but you can't bring yourself to listen? Tell us in the comments below. These situations are more common than we think." David chose that moment to walk into the room with coffee for me. "How are my 3 favorite people doing?" The tension was immediate. Sarah went rigid. Michael looked uncomfortable. I forced a smile. "We were just discussing tomorrow's schedule," I said. "Ah." David's eyes lingered on Sarah. "Sarah, I know you have concerns about the surgery. I want you to know how grateful I am that your mother is willing to make this sacrifice. Not many wives would do what she's doing." "Not many husbands would ask," Sarah replied icily. The silence stretched. Finally, David spoke again. "Sarah, I know we've never been as close as I hoped when I married your mother. But I love Margaret, and she loves me. This surgery represents hope for our future together." "What kind of future?" "Well, obviously a future where I'm not dying of liver disease." Something in his phrasing bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on it. As a hospital administrator, I'd heard thousands of patients and families discuss serious medical conditions. David's language felt off, clinical but not quite right. After David left to speak with the nurses, Sarah grabbed my hand. "Mom, promise me something. If anything feels wrong tomorrow morning, you'll stop the surgery." "Sarah, I can't promise that. David will die without this transplant." "Will he? Are you absolutely certain?" I looked at my daughter's face. She was terrified, not worried or concerned, genuinely terrified. "What aren't you telling me, Sarah?" "I've been doing some research on David, his background, his finances, his medical history." "That's completely inappropriate." "Maybe. But Mom, there are things about his past that don't add up. Previous marriages that ended badly, financial problems he's never mentioned to you, and most importantly, medical records that seem inconsistent. What medical records? Mom, as a hospital administrator, you know how to access medical databases, right? Have you actually verified David's diagnosis independently? The question hit me like ice water. In my 35 years in medical administration, I had never accepted a diagnosis at face value when investigating insurance claims. I always verified directly with treating physicians, cross-referenced with medical databases, confirmed billing codes matched actual procedures. But with David, my husband, I had simply trusted the doctors he brought me to see. Sarah, that would be a violation of medical privacy. Or it would be due diligence before you risk your life. The next morning at 5 a.m., Sarah arrived at our house to pick up David's insurance documents for the hospital. She had a key, of course. I'd given it to her years ago for emergencies. What she didn't expect was to hear David's voice coming from the study at 5:15 in the morning. "No, Dr. Harrison. Everything needs to go exactly as planned. Margaret can't survive the procedure." Sarah froze in the hallway, David's words not making sense. "I understand there are risks with any surgery, but we've discussed this. The complications need to seem natural. An accidental nick to the hepatic artery during the procedure. Blood loss. Tragic but unpredictable." Sarah's blood went cold. She pulled out her phone and started recording. "Yes, I understand it's $200,000, but once Margaret dies during the surgery, I'll have access to her life insurance policies. 3 of them. Total value. 1. $2 million. Your gambling debts disappear, and I get a fresh start with Jennifer." Jennifer? Who was Jennifer? Dr. Harrison, listen carefully. Margaret has 35 years of experience in hospital administration. She knows medical procedures inside and out. If she survives the surgery, she'll figure out what really happened. She's too smart, too experienced with medical fraud investigation. Sarah was shaking, still recording. The beauty of this plan is that everyone will think it was a tragic accident. A loving wife dies trying to save her husband's life. No one will question it. And certainly no one will suspect that I was never sick in the first place. Never sick? Yes, the liver enzymes were easy to fake with the supplements you provided. The medical records you falsified look completely legitimate. Even Margaret, with all her medical administration background, couldn't spot the fraud because she trusted me completely. Sarah had heard enough. She quietly left the house and drove straight to Michael's apartment. "Michael, you need to listen to this recording. Right now." She played the conversation. Michael's face went white. "Sarah, this can't be real." "It's real. David is planning to murder Mom during the surgery. He's been faking his illness. The surgeon is corrupt, probably in debt to loan sharks or something. And there's apparently a woman named Jennifer involved. We have to call the police. With what? A recording that could be dismissed as a hoax? We need more evidence. What about Mom? The surgery is in 4 hours. If you overheard something this shocking about a family member, what would you do? Like this video, if you'd investigate immediately, no matter what the personal cost. Sarah and Michael raced back to my house to confront me with the recording, but I was already gone. I'd left early for pre-surgical preparation at the hospital. They called my phone repeatedly. No answer. "Sarah, we have to call the hospital directly." "And tell them what? That we have a recording of a murder conspiracy that could be faked audio? They'll think we're crazy." "Then what do? We get proof that can't be dismissed. Real evidence of David's fraud." Sarah had inherited my analytical mind and professional skepticism. While I'd spent decades investigating insurance fraud and medical billing irregularities, she'd developed similar skills in corporate marketing, including digital forensics. "Michael, we need to find out who Jennifer is, verify David's medical records are false, and confirm Dr. Harrison's financial problems. We have 3 hours." "How?" The same way Mom used to investigate insurance fraud. Follow the money trail. Sarah started with David's phone records, which she accessed through their family phone plan. Multiple calls to Jennifer Walsh over the past 18 months. Late-night conversations, sometimes for hours. Jennifer Walsh, yoga instructor, 28 years old. Instagram account full of expensive jewelry, luxury vacations, designer clothes, all paid for by someone with much more money than a yoga instructor typically makes. Michael, look at these dates. Every piece of expensive jewelry coincides with money David withdrew from Mom's joint accounts. He's been funding a girlfriend for over a year. Next, Sarah investigated Dr. Harrison using publicly available information through the state medical board's online database, information that anyone could legally access. Public records showed recent bankruptcy filings, court documents related to gambling debts, and a medical license that was currently under review by the state medical board. Dr. Harrison owes $800,000 to various creditors, including some very dangerous people based on these court filings. His medical license is being investigated for 3 previous patient deaths during surgeries. He's desperate. But they still needed proof that David's medical records were falsified. Sarah, Mom always said medical fraud investigations require accessing internal billing systems. We can't do that. No, but we can do something else. We can verify whether David's supposed medical treatments actually happened. Sarah called David's insurance company, identifying herself as his stepdaughter calling on behalf of her mother, who was the primary beneficiary and had legal authority to access the information. As I'd taught her during her teenage years when she was fascinated by my work, insurance companies keep detailed records of every procedure, every test, every doctor visit. Ma'am, I show no claims submitted for liver disease treatment under David Sullivan's policy in the past 6 months. That can't be right. He's been seeing Dr. Peterson for months. Ma'am, the only claims I show are for routine annual physicals. No liver enzyme tests, no specialist referrals, no liver disease-related treatments whatsoever. Sarah's hands were shaking. Could you double-check that? Ma'am, I'm certain. If your husband had liver disease requiring a transplant, his insurance claims would show thousands of dollars in diagnostic testing, specialist consultations, and pre-transplant evaluations. I show none of that. Every piece of evidence confirmed the recording. David had been lying about everything. By 8 a.m., I was in the hospital's pre-surgical area, wearing a gown and getting my final preoperative tests. David sat beside me, holding my hand, playing the role of the grateful, loving husband perfectly. Margaret, I can't believe in just 2 hours. You'll be saving my life. I smiled at him, but Sarah's words from the night before kept echoing. Something feels wrong. That's when my phone buzzed with multiple missed calls and text messages from Sarah and Michael. The messages were frantic. Mom, do not have the surgery. David is lying about everything. Call us immediately. Mom, please, your life is in danger. I stared at the messages, my heart pounding. David noticed my expression. Everything okay, sweetheart? Sarah and Michael are worried. Of course they are. This is a big surgery. But Dr. Harrison is an excellent surgeon, and you're in great health. Everything will be fine. Something in his tone triggered my professional instincts. In 35 years of hospital administration, I'd heard that exact phrase thousands of times, usually from people who were lying about insurance claims or medical procedures. David, can I ask you something? Anything. Your liver enzyme numbers. Do you remember what they were at your last test? David hesitated just slightly. They were very high, dangerously high. But he didn't give specific numbers. In all my years of medical administration, patients with serious conditions always knew their exact numbers. Blood pressure, cholesterol, liver enzymes. They memorized the specific figures because they were tracking them desperately. What were the exact numbers? Margaret, I don't want to worry you with medical details right before your surgery. Red flag. Huge red flag. I excused myself to use the bathroom and called Sarah back. Sarah, you have 30 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't have this surgery. Mom, David has been lying about everything. He's not sick. He's planning for you to die during the surgery so he can collect your life insurance money and be with his girlfriend, Jennifer. I have proof. That's impossible. Mom, I have a recording of him talking to Dr. Harrison about ensuring you don't survive the procedure. I have evidence that he's been having an affair for 18 months. I have proof that his insurance claims show no liver disease treatment whatsoever. My professional mind started working. Insurance claims? Mom, you taught me to always follow the money trail. David's insurance shows no claims for liver disease treatment. None. No specialist visits, no enzyme tests, no diagnostic procedures, nothing. In my 35 years of medical administration, I had never seen a case of serious liver disease that didn't generate thousands of dollars in insurance claims. Diagnostic testing alone would create a paper trail a mile long. Sarah, how did you verify the insurance information? I called his insurance company directly. Mom, you know better than anyone. You can't fake liver disease without creating a massive insurance paper trail. She was right. Absolutely right. When your family doesn't believe you, but you know you're right, comment boundaries if you've been there. Sometimes we have to trust our instincts even when everyone else thinks we're crazy. I hung up and walked back to the pre-surgical area, my mind racing. David looked up expectantly. Everything okay with the kids? David, I need to see your latest blood work results. What? Why? Professional curiosity. I want to understand the liver enzyme numbers before we proceed. Margaret, you don't need to worry about medical details. Dr. Harrison has everything under control. Another red flag. Patients with serious illnesses always want to share medical details, especially with family members who have medical backgrounds. They want support, understanding, validation of their condition. I'd still like to see the actual test results. David's expression shifted slightly. Margaret, you're overthinking this. It's pre-surgical anxiety. Completely normal. But I wasn't overthinking. I was applying the same professional skepticism I'd used for 35 years to investigate medical fraud and insurance scams. David, in all the months you've been sick, I've never actually seen any of your medical records. Don't you think that's strange? I didn't want to burden you with details. Burden me? David, I spent 35 years in medical administration. I've reviewed thousands of medical cases. Seeing your records wouldn't burden me. It would help me understand your condition better. David was getting agitated. Margaret, we need to focus on the surgery, not on paperwork. That's when Dr. Harrison appeared. Mrs. Sullivan, how are we feeling this morning? Dr. Harrison, I'd like to review my husband's latest liver enzyme results before we proceed. Dr. Harrison and David exchanged a look. Just for a split second, but in 35 years of dealing with insurance fraud, I'd learned to watch for those subtle communications between conspirators. Mrs. Sullivan, that's not necessary. Your husband's condition is well documented. I'd still like to see the documentation. Mrs. Sullivan, are you having second thoughts about the procedure? The way he asked the question triggered every alarm bell in my professional experience. He wasn't asking out of medical concern. He was asking like someone whose plans were being threatened. I'm asking routine questions based on my professional background in medical administration. Dr. Harrison's expression hardened slightly. Mrs. Sullivan, we have an operating room scheduled, a full surgical team prepared, and your husband's life depends on this procedure. Now is not the time for administrative delays. Administrative delays? In 35 years of hospital work, I had never heard a legitimate surgeon refer to patient questions as administrative delays. That's when I realized Sarah was right about everything. I excused myself from the pre-surgical area and called Sarah back. Sarah, I need you to bring me every piece of evidence you have. Right now. Mom, you believe me? Your stepfather just displayed every red flag I learned to recognize in 35 years of investigating medical fraud. Plus, I just realized something that should have been obvious. No insurance company would approve a transplant surgery this quickly, without extensive pre-authorization documentation that I should have seen. Within 20 minutes, Sarah and Michael arrived at the hospital with a folder full of evidence. Mom, first, listen to this recording. She played David's phone conversation with Dr. Harrison. Hearing my husband casually discuss my murder was like being punched in the stomach. He was never sick? Never. Look at his insurance records. No claims for liver disease treatment. None. And Dr. Harrison? Gambling debts of $800,000 to dangerous people. 3 previous patient deaths under investigation. His medical license about to be revoked. The girlfriend? Jennifer Walsh. David's been funding her lifestyle for 18 months using money from your joint accounts. The life insurance policies? 3 policies totaling $1 or $2 million. David used your real medical records from your hospital employment physicals and forged your signature on the applications. Since the medical information was legitimate, the policies were approved without additional medical exams. I stared at the evidence with the same analytical mind I'd used to investigate countless insurance fraud cases. The pattern was clear, documented, undeniable. But emotionally, I felt like my world was collapsing. This wasn't just discovering David had lied about being sick. This was discovering that the man I'd shared a bed with for 12 years had been planning my murder while I slept next to him, trusting him completely. Sarah, how long have I been living with someone who wanted me dead? Mom, based on the life insurance policies, he started planning this about 2 years ago. But the affair with Jennifer has been going on for 18 months. The betrayal felt like physical pain. Every loving gesture, every concerned look, every grateful husband performance, it had all been calculated manipulation while he planned to collect insurance money from my death. I feel so stupid, Sarah. How could I not see this? Mom, you're not stupid. You're trained to investigate fraud in professional settings, not in your own marriage. You trusted your husband the same way any wife would. David exploited that trust. But the emotional reckoning would have to wait. We still needed evidence that would hold up in court. Life insurance policies I knew nothing about. How is that possible? Forged signatures, but they're valid policies. If you die during surgery, David collects everything. I felt sick. The man I'd been married to for 12 years, the man I'd trusted with my life, had been planning my murder for months. We need to call the police. Already done. Detective Rodriguez is on her way. But Mom, we need more evidence that will hold up in court. That's when my professional expertise became crucial. In 35 years of medical administration, I'd learned exactly how to document medical fraud in ways that would stand up to legal scrutiny. Sarah, we're going to create an evidentiary record that will send both David and Dr. Harrison to prison. Evidence like this changes everything. Share this story if you believe in protecting family members from predators. First, I called David's insurance company directly and requested a complete claims history for the past year, which I had legal authority to access as his wife. The customer service representative confirmed what Sarah had discovered. 0 claims related to liver disease treatment. Ma'am, if your husband had liver disease requiring a transplant, we would have processed thousands of dollars in diagnostic testing, specialist consultations, and pre-surgical evaluations. I show none of that. Can you email me a complete claims summary? Of course. But ma'am, are you aware that 3 life insurance policies have been purchased on your behalf in the past year? My blood went cold. What? Yes, ma'am. The insurance applications list your husband as the beneficiary. Total death benefit of $1, $2 million. I never applied for those policies. Ma'am, you might want to contact the insurance companies directly. This could indicate identity theft or fraud. Next, I used my hospital administration credentials to access Dr. Harrison's professional records through the State Medical Board database. What I found was terrifying. 3 previous patients had died during Dr. Harrison's surgeries in the past 2 years, all under suspicious circumstances. All 3 deaths were currently under investigation. Sarah, Dr. Harrison has been killing patients. This isn't his first murder. It's part of a pattern. Mom, what do we do with this information? We document everything professionally, create an unshakable legal record, and then we set a trap. My years in medical administration had taught me that successful prosecutions require both evidence and confession. We had the evidence, but we needed David and Dr. Harrison to incriminate themselves beyond any possible legal defense. How do we do that? We make them think their plan is working, then document their admissions of guilt. I called David from the hospital bathroom. David, I'm having some pre-surgical anxiety. Can you come talk to me privately? Of course, sweetheart. I'll be right there. While I waited, I set up my phone to record our conversation. In 35 years of investigating fraud, I'd learned that criminals always confess when they think they've won. David arrived within minutes, concerned and loving. Margaret, what's wrong? I've been thinking about Sarah's concerns. She seems genuinely terrified about this surgery. Sarah has never accepted our marriage. She's trying to sabotage our relationship. But what if she's right? What if something goes wrong during the surgery? David took my hands, his expression shifting to what I now recognized as calculated manipulation. Margaret, listen to me carefully. After the surgery, everything will be different. Our financial problems will be solved. We'll have a fresh start, a new beginning. How will our financial problems be solved? Well, the insurance will cover the surgery costs and what? David hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Margaret, I need to tell you something. If something happens to you during the surgery, you need to know that I'll be financially secure. I took out some additional life insurance policies to protect our future. You took out life insurance policies without telling me? I wanted to surprise you. But Margaret, the important thing is that if anything happens during the surgery, I'll be able to afford the best medical care for my recovery. He was confessing to insurance fraud while trying to make it sound like a gift. David, are you saying you expect something to go wrong during my surgery? No. But Margaret, these are serious procedures. There are always risks. And if the worst happens, I want you to know I'll be taken care of. I stared at my husband, finally seeing him clearly for the first time in 12 years. David, what if I told you I've changed my mind about the surgery? His expression shifted completely. The loving husband mask fell away, replaced by something cold and calculating. Margaret, you can't change your mind. I'll die without this transplant. But if the surgery is risky for me? Margaret, we've already scheduled the operating room, the surgical team, everything is prepared. Dr. Harrison has cleared his schedule. You can't back out now. The desperation in his voice confirmed everything. This wasn't about his health. It was about executing a murder plan that was already in motion. What if I insist on getting a second opinion about your liver condition? David's mask slipped completely. There's no time for a second opinion. Margaret, stop overthinking this. The surgery is happening today. That's when I knew we had him. At 11 a.m., 30 minutes before my scheduled surgery, Detective Rodriguez arrived at the hospital with 2 other officers. Sarah and Michael were with them, along with an FBI agent specializing in medical fraud. We had spent 2 hours building an unshakable legal case, recorded confessions, forged insurance documents, falsified medical records, and evidence of Dr. Harrison's previous suspicious patient deaths. David was in the pre-surgical waiting area, probably thinking his plan was minutes away from success. Mrs. Sullivan, Detective Rodriguez said, we're going to need you to confront your husband while wearing a recording device. Are you prepared to do that? After 35 years of investigating medical fraud, I knew exactly how to get criminals to confess completely. Detective, I'm ready. We walked into the waiting area where David sat with Dr. Harrison. They looked up expectantly. David, Dr. Harrison, I need to discuss something with both of you. Of course, sweetheart. Is everything ready for the surgery? Actually, no. I've decided not to have the surgery. The reaction was immediate and telling. Both men went rigid with panic. Margaret, what are you talking about? David's voice was sharp, desperate. I've been investigating your medical condition, David, using the same skills I developed in 35 years of medical administration. David and Dr. Harrison exchanged looks. What kind of investigation? Dr. Harrison asked. The kind where I discovered that David's insurance shows 0 claims for liver disease treatment, 0 diagnostic procedures, 0 specialist consultations, 0 evidence of any liver disease whatsoever. David's face went white. Margaret, there must be some mistake. The mistake was trusting you. I also discovered that you've taken out 3 life insurance policies on me totaling $1. $2 million, all without my knowledge or consent. Margaret, I can explain that. Can you also explain your 18-month affair with Jennifer Walsh? Or the fact that you've been using our joint bank account to fund her lifestyle? David looked trapped. Who told you about Jennifer? You did. Yesterday morning at 5:15 a.m., in a recorded phone conversation with Dr. Harrison where you discussed ensuring I don't survive today's surgery. Both men went completely silent. Dr. Harrison, I also investigated your background. $400,000 in gambling debts. 3 previous patients who died during your surgeries, all currently under investigation. And a medical license that's about to be revoked. Dr. Harrison stood up. Mrs. Sullivan, you're clearly experiencing pre-surgical anxiety. I'm experiencing investigative clarity. The same clarity I used for 35 years to catch medical fraudsters and insurance scammers. That's when Detective Rodriguez stepped into view. David Sullivan and Dr. James Harrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and medical fraud. Justice served at the perfect moment, like if this gave you chills. David's reaction was pure panic. Margaret, wait! You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You've been planning to murder me during a fake medical procedure so you can collect life insurance money and start a new life with your girlfriend. It wasn't supposed to be murder. It was supposed to look like a surgical accident. He was confessing everything. David, there's no difference. You conspired with a corrupt surgeon to ensure I died during surgery. That's premeditated murder. Dr. Harrison tried to run. He made it about 10 feet before being tackled by 2 officers. Dr. Harrison, I called out, your gambling debts don't justify murder. You don't understand. They would have killed me if I didn't pay. So you decided to kill me instead? The FBI agent stepped forward. Dr. Harrison, we've identified 3 previous patients who died during your surgeries under suspicious circumstances. This investigation is much larger than just Mrs. Sullivan's case. David was sobbing now, the charming husband facade completely shattered. Margaret, please. I do love you. This got out of hand. You don't love me, David. You never did. You saw a lonely widow with life insurance and medical knowledge, and you spent 12 years setting up the perfect murder scheme. That's not true. Then why did you marry me 6 months after my first husband died? Why did you insist on joint bank accounts immediately? Why did you start taking out life insurance policies on me without my knowledge? David had no answer because there was no answer. Everything had been calculated from the beginning. Sarah stepped forward. David, I knew something was wrong. I've been watching you manipulate my mother for months. Sarah, you never gave me a chance. I gave you 12 years. But a daughter's job is to protect her mother, especially from predators. The officers were handcuffing both men when David made one final attempt at manipulation. "Margaret, if you do this, you'll be alone again, just like after your first husband died. Is that what you want?" I looked at this man who had shared my bed for 12 years, who had planned my murder with the casual calculation of a business transaction. "David, I'd rather be alone than dead." 6 months later, both David and Dr. Harrison accepted plea bargains and were sentenced to life in prison without parole, avoiding lengthy trials that would have dragged the case out for years. David's charges: conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, insurance fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. The prosecution proved that he had been planning my murder since learning about my retirement 2 years ago, gradually building up life insurance policies using my legitimate medical records from my hospital employment physicals, and forging my signatures on applications. Dr. Harrison's charges were even more extensive: first-degree murder in the deaths of 3 previous patients, conspiracy to commit murder in my case, medical fraud, and operating without a valid license. The FBI investigation revealed that he had been killing patients for money to pay gambling debts for over 2 years, and David had promised him not just the $200,000 initial payment, but an ongoing partnership in medical insurance fraud schemes that could have generated millions. The evidence showed that Dr. Harrison had submitted fraudulent pre-authorization documents to my insurance company, making it appear that all required approvals for the transplant surgery were properly in place. This explained how the surgery had been scheduled without triggering the extensive verification process that should have exposed the fraud. Jennifer Walsh testified for the prosecution in exchange for a reduced sentence on accessory charges. She admitted that David had promised to divorce me and marry her after collecting my life insurance money. The evidence was overwhelming: recorded conversations, falsified medical records, forged insurance documents, and financial records showing David's systematic theft from our joint accounts. But the real victory wasn't the criminal convictions. It was what happened to my relationship with my children. "Mom," Sarah said during the trial, "I'm sorry I waited so long to confront you with my suspicions. Sarah, you saved my life. If you hadn't investigated David's background and recorded that phone conversation, I would be dead." "But you saved yourself, Mom. You used your professional skills to build the legal case that convicted them." She was right. My 35 years in medical administration had given me the exact expertise needed to recognize medical fraud and document criminal evidence. "Sarah, there's something I need to tell you. You were right about David from the beginning. A daughter's instincts about protecting her mother turned out to be more accurate than a wife's trust in her husband." Comment boundaries if this story empowered you to trust your instincts. Sometimes we have to choose family protection over social politeness. The experience changed how I think about family relationships and personal boundaries. Michael admitted that he'd had reservations about David for years, but didn't want to upset me. "Mom, I should have spoken up sooner." "Michael, the important thing is that when Sarah needed support to investigate David, you helped her. You both protected me when I couldn't protect myself." The case attracted national attention, partly because of the elaborate murder scheme, but mostly because it highlighted how predators target older women, especially widows with financial resources and medical knowledge. I was invited to speak at conferences about recognizing elder abuse and medical fraud. My experience as both a hospital administrator and a victim gave me unique credibility. "Ladies," I told an audience of women over 50, "trust your children's instincts. They see things we don't want to see. If your adult children are concerned about your romantic partner, investigate those concerns with the same professional skepticism you'd use in any other area of your life." The most important lesson I learned was about boundaries in family relationships. For 12 years, I had prioritized being a good wife over listening to my daughter's legitimate concerns. I had dismissed Sarah's warnings as jealousy or difficulty accepting her stepfather, when in reality she was trying to protect me from a predator. "What's your biggest takeaway from this experience, Mom?" Sarah asked me recently. That family protection trumps social politeness. Your job as my daughter was never to make David feel welcomed. It was to keep me safe. You did your job perfectly. The experience also taught me about the importance of maintaining professional skepticism in personal relationships. As a hospital administrator, I would never have accepted medical claims without verification, insurance documents without authentication, or financial records without independent confirmation. But in my marriage, I accepted David's word about everything without applying the same professional standards. "Mom," Michael observed, "you investigated insurance fraud for 35 years, but you never investigated your own husband's medical claims." He was right. Love had made me professionally careless in the one situation where professional skills could have saved my life. Today I work as a consultant for law enforcement agencies investigating medical fraud and elder abuse. My experience as both a medical administrator and a victim gives me insights that help other families recognize similar schemes. The FBI estimates that medical murder conspiracies like David's are more common than most people realize. Corrupt medical professionals, desperate for money, team up with predatory spouses or family members to kill patients during routine procedures. Mrs. Sullivan, Detective Rodriguez told me recently, "Your case has helped us identify similar schemes in 3 other states. Your professional documentation of the evidence created a template we use to investigate medical murder conspiracies." But the most meaningful outcome has been the healing in my family relationships. Though it's been a longer and more difficult process than I initially expected, the trauma of discovering that someone you trusted completely had been planning your murder for years doesn't just disappear after the criminal conviction. I spent months in therapy, learning to process the betrayal and rebuild my ability to trust. "Mom," Sarah said during one of our therapy sessions together, "I need you to know how guilty I feel about waiting so long to confront you. I was watching David manipulate you for months, and I convinced myself I was just being paranoid." "Sarah, you were protecting yourself too. If you'd confronted me earlier, I might have chosen David over you and pushed you away completely. You waited until you had undeniable proof because you knew that was the only way I'd listen." Michael struggled with his own guilt. "Mom, I enabled David's manipulation by staying silent about my reservations. I chose keeping family peace over keeping you safe, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." Michael, you supported Sarah when it mattered most. When she needed help building the legal case against David, you stepped up. That's what saved my life. The healing process taught all of us important lessons about family communication and boundaries. "Mom, I learned something important too," Sarah told me. "I learned that when you love someone, you don't enable their bad choices. You protect them from dangerous people, even when they don't want to be protected." Michael has become much more assertive about expressing concerns instead of avoiding family conflict. I realize that keeping peace is less important than keeping families safe. We also learned about the importance of financial transparency in family relationships. David had been able to manipulate our finances for years because I hadn't maintained the same oversight of personal accounts that I used in professional settings. Now I review all insurance policies, bank statements, and financial documents with the same attention to detail I used in hospital administration. Trust in personal relationships doesn't require abandoning professional vigilance. "Mom," Sarah asked me recently, "do you regret marrying David?" I regret not investigating his background before marriage. I regret dismissing your concerns for 12 years. But I don't regret the experience because it taught me the most important lesson of my life, which is that a daughter's job is to protect her mother, and a mother's job is to listen when her daughter identifies dangers she can't see. Comment boundaries if you believe families should prioritize protection over politeness. What's your biggest takeaway from Margaret's story? Share your thoughts below. The criminal trial revealed that David's scheme was even more calculated than we initially realized. He had researched my professional background carefully before targeting me for marriage, specifically because my medical knowledge would make me an ideal organ donor, and my administrative experience meant I would have comprehensive life insurance policies. David's financial desperation had started about 3 years ago, with bad investments and gambling losses. The murder plan began 2 years ago when I announced my retirement, and he realized he needed access to significant money quickly without going through a divorce that would expose his debts and affair. Margaret, the prosecutor explained during the trial, David chose you as a victim precisely because of your professional competence and your retirement timing. He needed a wife who could pass medical evaluations for organ donation, who would have comprehensive life insurance through her hospital employment, and whose retirement would make the timing seem natural. Dr. Harrison's desperation ran deeper than money. His $800,000 gambling debts were owed to organized crime figures who had threatened his family's lives. David had offered him not just the $200,000 immediate payment, but promised him an ongoing partnership in medical insurance fraud schemes that could have generated millions over time, enough to completely escape his dangerous situation. The predator had used my professional strengths against me, but ultimately those same professional strengths were what saved my life and sent him to prison. Today, when I speak to women about recognizing elder abuse, I emphasize one key point. The skills that made you successful in your career are the same skills that can protect you in your personal life. Don't abandon professional skepticism just because someone claims to love you. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter from Jennifer Walsh. Mrs. Sullivan, I know you have no reason to forgive me, but I want you to know that David told me you were dying of cancer and had asked him to help you end your suffering. I thought the insurance money was to pay for palliative care after you were gone. I had no idea he was planning to murder you during fake surgery. When I learned the truth during the trial, I realized I had been manipulated just like you. Thank you for stopping him before he could hurt anyone else. Even David's girlfriend had been lied to and manipulated. Predators like David don't just target one victim, they create webs of deception that trap multiple people. But the most important outcome of this entire experience has been learning to trust family instincts over social expectations. Sarah, I told my daughter recently, for 12 years, I prioritized being polite to your stepfather over listening to your protective instincts. I will never make that mistake again. Mom, you taught me something important too. You showed me that it's possible to love someone and still apply professional skepticism to their claims. Love doesn't require abandoning critical thinking. Today, at age 63, I'm healthier and happier than I've been in years. I work as a consultant, helping families and law enforcement identify medical fraud and elder abuse. I have a close relationship with both my children, built on honest communication and mutual protection. Most importantly, I've learned that family boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping dangerous people from getting close enough to cause harm. Subscribe for more true stories of family protection and justice. If this story taught you something important about trusting your instincts or protecting family members, let us know in the comments below. David Sullivan and Dr. James Harrison will spend the rest of their lives in prison, where they can't hurt anyone else's family. And I will spend the rest of my life grateful for a daughter who loved me enough to investigate when something felt wrong, and brave enough to speak the truth when no one wanted to hear it. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to be polite when your family's safety is at stake. That's a lesson worth remembering.